Welcome to the Fire Circle, interviews with the modern granny woman in your life. My name is Ellis Elliott, and I write a series of cozy mysteries based on a lineage of Appalachian granny women, or witches, as they were sometimes called. So, what is a granny woman? Well, let me tell you, back in the pre-Civil War days in the isolated community mountains of East Tennessee, there were certain women that took on the combined role of healer, midwife, and preparing the dead for burial. These were the granny women, or witches. While these women were depended upon by their communities in these important situations, they were often seen as outsiders because of their esoteric knowledge and by the fact that they did not follow the prescribed role of women at all for that time. In other words, they were often seen as peculiar. There are many modern-day granny witches, and they might not even be a granny or a witch. Probably neither. But there's someone who, when you think of them, conjures up a vivid memory, and who cast a spell, if you will, on the person you are today. These are the folks we're to meet in our Fire Circle interviews. I have invited a special guest today, Christene Seda Elliott, to be my guest to talk about who is a modern day granny woman in her life. Chris, tell us about you first.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I am a writer living in Los Angeles. I'm aspiring to be a screenwriter, but I write essays too and started writing some short stories, but no one has seen them, so is that even real? Um, but Ellis, when you told me about this prompt or this discussion, it has made me spiral in the most beautiful way of thinking about this one woman that I want to tell you about.
Yay, I'm so excited. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Chris has a lot of accolades in her writing career, but most recently she was in Modern Love in the New York Times. Not that I'm proud or anything. Okay, so I am ready to jump in to the modern granny woman. Just tell me a story about her.
Okay. Um, I was trying to think of the first time that I remember meeting her. This woman is named Kimmy, and that was short for Kimberly. I was living in Hawaii. I grew up in Hawaii, and my dad was in the army, so this was military housing on Schofield Barracks in Oahu. And I had had neighbors before, many different neighbors, because everyone gets deployed or reassigned somewhere else, and they just kind of move without notice. But I was 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, like those 4 years, that was the range of age that I remember. The story that I want to tell is one of the first times I ever walked into Kimmy's house, which the townhouse is identical to the house that I grew up in. It is the same layout, the same walls, the same stairs that lead to the same amount of bedrooms. But when I walked into Kimmy's house for the first time, it was like walking through an apothecary. It was like stuffed with cabinets of curiosity, and she was a crafter, so it was a cabinet full of rubber stamps, and then a cabinet dedicated to stationery, and then a cabinet with essential oils, and this like string that looked like I think it's called Rafa string or Rafi string or something. It was
Yeah.
like pearl string. And it was just all of this craft supplies. And Kimmy wasn't there. This is a little girl named Kylie that I met who took me into her home for the first time. And I like didn't want to touch anything, but there were dolls everywhere and pillows and quilts. And I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never felt more um just like inspired to create, but also like warm and hugged in like such a wholesome place that smelled like a smell that I wouldn't learn what it was until many, many years later when I was in an essential oil shop. And I think it might have been patchouli possibly, but I smelled it when I walked in, and I went like scouring through the whole place trying to find the source of the smell, but it was like a combination of patchouli oils, beeswax candles, and like the two of those scents made the smell of Kimmy's house. And that was my first memory of walking into her place, because then I never wanted to leave, and that became a problem. I had to I had to limit my time I was there, because you would have to drag me out. I never wanted to leave her home.
Oh, I love that. And I love that so oftentimes our impressions are sensorial. There's, you remember what it smells like, you remember what it felt like. Had you been creative prior to that, or did that open up Pandora's box?
That fully opened Pandora's box for me, because I had never seen anything like this before. The idea of stationery, we just we bought cards. I was gifted cards that were just like reprinted. I never, or like printed before. I never seen rubber stamps and stationery. I'd never seen anything like that. And it was like beautiful cards that had like ropes tied around it, and little, like, oh my God, pressed flowers like on it. Then that's just the stationery cabinet, because she had like a wardrobe in her living room that just had quilt swatches, because she also quilted and made handmade quilts. So there was constantly patterns running or on an old sewing machine, not like a brother sewing machine. It was the kind that kind of had the silhouette of like an old timey sewing machine with a really defined needle. It looked like an antique, but she used it. She used it all the time. And I really believe she is responsible for the love of crafting that I have. But and it goes into cooking as well, and so many other things. But the source of my interest in crafting came from Kimmy.
And where was Kimmy originally from?
I don't remember.
That's
I
all right.
knew, yeah, Kimmy existed for me in that time, and I know that we talked forever, but I don't know if, because I was an 8-year-old kid, I just wasn't absorbing the information from her. And that's been a problem, because many points in my life when she left, I've tried to find her. And back in 2007 or 8, when Facebook started coming out, she was the first person I tried to find on
Oh,
Facebook. And I knew her name, Kimmy. I knew it was short for Kimberly. I knew her maiden name. I knew her married name. My
what
mom,
were those?
her maiden name is Saint Germain. Her
Okay.
married name, she's no longer married to this man. I know this because my mom said somehow she had learned that she wasn't married to this man whose last name was Davis, but she was Kimmy Davis when I knew her. So then I
Okay.
don't know if she went back to Kimmy Saint Germain, but I have looked for her since 1996 when I left Hawaii. That whole time I've like, any chance I've ever had to go and find someone, she was the person I was trying to find. Because like a witch, she just disappeared with no footprint on the internet. And she's so,
Yes, I love it. Oh my goodness. The When you mentioned not being able to remember her name, I mean, remember where she's from, that makes absolute good sense, because who at 8 or 9 or whatever is ever going to care or ask about that kind of thing anyway? But did you actually craft with her?
yes, I did. She taught me how to make the station. Like it was like every this had to be, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I was in school. I walked to my school, and I would remember I was probably 2 or 3 years older than her oldest daughter, Kylie, but we went to the same school. So at times we would walk to school together, we'd walk home together, and on the weekends, I would spend most days, and she would just have a craft ready for all of us to do. It was almost like a daycare type situation where she didn't sign up for it. I just showed up, and she had crafts laid out for her daughters. She had two daughters. Her littlest was named Mackenzie, and she was the most beautiful little girl I had ever seen. I was so obsessed with this sweet little girl. But we would sit at the table, and she taught me how to stamp on stationaries, just like happy birthday messages. And I would always want to make something for someone else. I was making my parents cards for holidays. I didn't keep a lot of stuff, but she would make these beautiful dolls, or she made
Oh,
these dolls, I think, and the last time I remember seeing one of the dolls that looked like the dolls that she had made was in the movie Little Women from
ah,
1994, I think the 94 version of Little Women. There's a set of dolls that Beth has, and when Beth passes away, there's like a shot of these dolls on a chest, and the doll in the middle looked exactly like the dolls Kimmy used to make, which is just a simple, like, I would imagine it's like a cotton ball and then like fabric pulled over the cotton ball, so there's no face, but there's like yarn hair and then a really pretty dress. And it's just the most simple doll you could ever imagine. It's just all soft and fluffy, but we made those dolls. One of the times I came over, she just had all the materials out for us to make these dolls.
oh. So is it like a doll size like this?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was mostly about the dress. Like the prominent thing was
Uh,
this just very simple floral pattern dress, faceless doll.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 That I love that because that you imprint your own imagination on that. It's either really creepy when they don't have faces
Yeah.
or you create your own person or your own entity out of that. So when you reflect, I know it's hard to remember. It is hard, so hard for me to remember anything, but the do you remember what that felt like? Number one, to come into this apartment that has these opportunities, this beautiful paper, those beautiful pieces of fabric, what that felt like. And then part B would be what it felt like for you in the moment. Was there anything particular about that feeling?
Yes. I remember that I didn't want to leave her house. And
Mm.
I would get in trouble because it was, well, I mean, I had well worn out my welcome. I should have been home. They were getting dinner ready, and this poor neighbor girl whose parents just worked all the time, they're just kind of stuck with her, and they always made me feel so welcome. But I just remember constantly my mom telling me, give them a break, give them a break. And I didn't have the perspective I do now as a little kid that like families want time with their families. But the thing that has stuck with me is I've never forgotten her and the impact that she's had on my life. But more than anything, because I didn't grow up with younger siblings or even a sister, I only had an older brother. I I just became really obsessed with this mother and daughter and like sisters relationship that they had, that like there were so many times that I got to just kind of quietly observe. I was there to do my little arts and crafts. I would become hyper focused on the thing that I was doing, my little note cards or just whatever little craft thing I was doing. And then I got to just kind of observe them interacting with each other. And I would watch Kimmy teach her youngest, Mackenzie, how to do something. And she's not quite old enough, but still like that, like watching her teach her daughter, I didn't know then that I know now that it's like I would want to emulate that in my future with a daughter, with like with the women in my life. And
Right.
I sometimes tend to be the one that's like forcing my friends to sit down and do arts and crafts with me. And I'm like, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but this is how I do it. This is how you can't do it. And I'm teaching them. But then I think that's why I fell in love with the movie Little Women, and coming on 20 years. This Christmas will be 20 years that I watched that movie. It's my only Christmas tradition. I watch it every Christmas morning, and it started 20 years ago. But the aesthetic and the feeling that that movie gives me is what I remember in my childhood with this elusive woman that I know so much about, but then also don't know anything about.
Ah, yes, yes. Ah, I love to imagine that it's almost like a channeling of what she gave you. And I also think there's a familiar thread or a common thread with these our modern day granny women like Kimmy, that often what attracts us is the unfamiliarity that we don't have in our own lives,
Yeah.
whatever that is about that person. And I love that it was not just the creativity, but it was also this, you looking in this snow globe of a different kind of life that from the
Yes.
one you had. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm Puerto Rican. My parents are both Puerto Rican. We lived in Hawaii, but culturally we still lived very Puerto Rican, which is the only thing I knew growing up. It was, a specific kind of food that I love, salsa music. It was hanging out with friends on the week, my parents' friends on the weekend, and having like little parties where we dance salsa and stuff. So that was what I was so familiar with. Kimmy, who was white, kind of brought me into like my very first white household. And I don't know how else to say it other than it was so different than anything I'd ever experienced. It was the first time I think I remember having like meatloaf and this food that I didn't really know or have homemade. This is not, I know this is native, but she would make this pan-fried bread called Navajo bread, which I
Uh-huh.
think is only 3 ingredients because I looked it up and I made it during COVID because that memory came to me like a slap in the face when I was thinking about her one day and I was like, oh my God, she made this bread. And I looked it up and all I knew is that it was like, I think I remembered the word Navajo. And when I Googled Navajo bread, an image of
Oh,
this,
yeah, yeah.
and she would make it 3, 4 times a week on the stove, lightly salt it, and then it just stayed on her kitchen counter. And throughout the day, everyone would just come and tear a little piece off and tear a little piece
Oh,
off. And I would hover over just like tearing pieces, like the best bread I ever had. But it was like homemade bread in this woman's house that I felt so safe in. And her husband, Harry, was, this like handsome, blue-eyed, ginger guy that again, like these are all things I were not familiar. Like this wasn't normal to me. So just like I could observe this very American family with a dinner time that they all sat down together and had dinner at the same time every night. Kimmy was a stay-at-home mom. And again, that was foreign to me. So to have
right.
there every day, all day.
I think you also said another important word. You felt safe
Yeah.
there, which is huge. And I
Yeah.
love how it's like these gentle little, I don't know what metaphor to use, whether it's threads that have woven themselves into your life that you now, you cook the bread, you make the cards, you bring your friends together. You still watch Little Women that has that family. So one of the questions I had sent beforehand had to do with how you might see a modern day granny woman or how that would evolve into the future, what that might look like. Have you thought about that?
Yes. Yes. And how I feel about that answer, because I think the energy between women is so special and unique, and it's um like the friendship that you can have with women in your life. And I'm going to separate family out of this. So I'm not talking about your sister, your mother, your aunt, or anyone like that. But there are women older than us, all of us. We all have women that are older than us that have gone through life, that have the ability to share their experiences with you. And it's like, I'm thinking of all the women in my life that have not been afraid to tell me the things that suck about being a woman and getting older and aging. And it's like the granny witch, this like that role, that woman are, in my opinion, are all the women I am that woman for younger girls in my life. And I want to be that woman that can share the stuff that I learned at this age. And it's not, I'm not talking even like skincare and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just like in general, how, talking about Kimmy, I don't have all of the memories that I once had. And I'm a writer. I write everything down. The minute thoughts come to me, I just try to find a place to put it, because you would think that I'm going to lose my memory. That's how quick I am to write everything down. But if I had, like, it's the women in my life who walk me through their divorces and breakups, and getting pregnant and having children, their relationships with people as they get older, the friendships that they lose when they make certain choices in their lives. Like that's the role, that's the modern day woman, and we are all that for each other.
Yes, amen. I absolutely believe that. That it's just a circular, path. We're just passing it down and then it passes back down and keeps going. I had asked you if you had anything, a tangible object that you might relate to Kimmy. And if you do, could you share it with us?
Yes,
Tell
this
us
is okay. This is my prized possession because I think I tried to do them. I should have done the math before this, but this is a 32-year-old pillow.
that.
This is one of the crafts I made at Kimmy's house. So these are, oh my God, it looks so dirty. It's never been washed in 32 years. This is never, but these are, she made this quilt pattern, the purple.
Mhm.
She had just this purple square plus the star in the middle already sewn and laid down with a bunch of swatches. And she said, "What color speaks to you? Like, which one do you like?" And I was like, the purple looks so beautiful. And then I picked out this like flower pattern here. And then I picked out this like red checkered print. And she helped me man the sewing machine into a square. We stuffed it with cotton, or yeah, the stuffing.
Yeah.
And then I sewed that seam myself at
Oh,
9 years old. That's the first thing I ever sewed, is this little seam that kind of closes the pillow right.
yes, yes.
I've had this, there have been so many things that I've just gotten rid of because they don't serve a purpose. I have nowhere to put it. It doesn't need to go anywhere. And everything I've ever purged, this pillow will never make the cut. It's the only thing I have from my time with Kimmy. And I have a memory box where I put all of these little things that's like, there's no purpose for it now, but I can't get rid of it. I'm never gonna get rid of
Right.
this. But this is my prized possession from Kimmy.
I love it. And what magic that is when she gave you, here's a basic guideline, but here's all these other fabrics for you to choose what speaks to you. That to me is truly a gift of her magic. I mean, can you imagine
Yeah,
that, being able to light that fire in somebody, in just the right person that
yeah,
happened to live down the hall or whatever? Oh my goodness, this has been wonderful. Kimmy, maybe she's out there, maybe somehow in social media we'll get those names, and you just
yeah,
never know this day and age.
that's
Thank
true.
you. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
I will not go on and on about your greatness right this very minute, so I will have to stop myself. And thank you so much for being uh, open to this interview. And I'll look forward to seeing you as soon as possible.
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
going to close right now. Thank you, everyone.